Metal Gear Solid 3 is pretty good.
You're pretty good.
If you don't know what this game is, Metal Gear Solid is a game series about tactical espionage action, aka stealth. These games also have a very complicated storyline that takes from real-world events and goes into themes such as the ethics of nuclear warfare, patriotism, loyalty, genes, memes, and information control, just to name a few. And along with in-game cutscenes and storytelling that rival actual movies, they also have very intuitive gameplay that's half anxiety-inducing and half action movie fantasy. So why am I covering this game in particular? Well, I just recently started playing through the series during winter break, and they've become some of my favorite games of all time that quickly. They simply keep getting better and better, and to me, MGS3 is the best game of the series, straight up. So let me tell you why you need to experience it if you haven't already. Okay, where should I even start? Oh yeah, story. That's a big deal in this game, so here's a quick rundown of what happens in the first few hours. An alternate reality 1964 during the Cold War. The CIA received word that the Soviet Union has been secretly developing a tank capable of firing a nuke from any location, the Shagohod, and the US wants to rescue the scientists who helped create it. So the US makes the rational decision of sending a squad, they send one guy to infiltrate the country and find the scientist named Sokolov, all without being seen by the enemy. And this lone soldier is the player character Naked Snake, or simply Snake, not to be confused with the other protagonist Solid Snake, who is actually the clone of Big Boss, who is called Naked Snake in this game. Alright, let me stop. If I continue explaining the different snakes in the series, your brain's gonna explode. Anyways, once Snake reaches Sokolov, bad news, he learns the Shagohod's almost complete. Worse news, his former mentor, the boss, is apparently betraying the US and defecting to the Soviet Union. She's accompanied by her special superhuman squad, the Cobra Unit, as well as the main villain, Colonel Volgin, who wants nothing more than total power. This group of baddies steal back Sokolov and fuck up Snake real bad. Though he survives. Volgin then fires an American nuke into Soviet territory, almost kickstarting a nuclear war. So yeah, that virtuous mission was a failure. But the US has one more chance to prove its innocence. So 1 week later, Snake is sent back to Russia with 3 objectives.
Rescue Sokolov. Find out what's happened to the Shagohod, then destroy it. And finally, eliminate the boss. This mission will be codenamed Operation Snake Eater.
This premise is pretty straightforward. I like how it ties into real history, and it has some pretty good stakes. Also, the characters in this are just so good. Snake himself is thankfully not just a stoic soldier boy. He gives off total himbo energy. He's a nerd for guns, and he really wants to know if all the animals in the jungle taste good.
So...
What? How does it taste?
Yep.
Ugh.
Over the radio, Snake is accompanied by a support crew, including Major Zero, a Bond fanatic.
007 is the biggest thing to come out of England since the Mayflower. I wouldn't be surprised if they made 20 more of those movies.
Paramedic, your medical and food assistant, and film buff. And Sigint, who assists Snake with weapons intel and is just as much of a gun nerd as him. These guys are fun to call and they are pretty helpful in the main game, but I wish they had more characterization. I felt like I didn't connect to them as much as the Kodak crews of the previous games. Thankfully though, you get to meet a bunch of other supporting characters that are larger than life and that you know a lot more of. You got Ocelot, a Russian commander who becomes Snake's rival. He is ridiculous. Like, to summon his soldiers, he fucking meows. Also, the man is a weeb for Western tropes. He gets every chance he can to spin his fucking revolvers. And when he does those stupid gun hand things, bro, I die inside. He gradually seems to take a liking to Snake, taking his advice on revolvers, and also trying to one-up himself against Snake, even though he fails each duel again and again. Also, I think he's gay for Snake, but we'll just leave it at that. Then there's Eva, a Russian woman who provides Snake with helpful info about the mission. She plays the role of like a femme fatale for Snake. As they keep saving each other's lives, they become lovers. She's pretty charming, and I like the moments where she takes initiative and power over Snake. She's a fun character. Maybe a bit too over-sexualized during her first cutscenes, but it's a product of its time. Like, when she's introduced, you can toggle the camera to look at her. You can blame the creator of the game for this one. Hideo Kojima, what the fuck. Antagonists are cool too. I love how unhinged the Cobra Unit are, with just enough backstory for you to care about each of them. And while Colonel Volgin is straight up evil, the boss herself is not the traditional antagonist. I won't spoil what happens, but her interactions with Snake, her true motives, along with the heart-wrenching ending, they just tie everything together. The relationship between Snake and the boss is probably the most impressive part of the story. It's a mentor and her student, both of them believing in two different ideals of patriotism, and seemingly on opposite sides. Yet, one stays true to her country to the very end, and the other ends up doubting everything he's fought for. Other than that, there are a few problems with the story, such as cutscenes and coda calls being 80% exposition and having pretty awful pacing, but that's a regular quirk for any of Hideo Kojima's games. And overall, I think MGS3 has some of the best story of any video game. It's definitely one of its unique selling points. But of course, the other unique selling point is the gameplay and presentation. You've looked at the footage long enough and you probably agree that this 2-decade-old game still looks pretty good today. One reason is because of its setting. Previous games were mostly set in modern military facilities. Cold, metallic, claustrophobic, but kinda boring. MGS3 is mostly set in natural environments. There's a few military bases, but you'll mostly be sneaking through jungles, swamps, and mountains. And during regular gameplay, there's no music. It's very peaceful, very immersive. Of course, when you get into combat, the tense music kicks in, but when you're sneaking, just being quiet, it's just you and nature. It's oddly relaxing. With this more natural setting, there are of course some survival elements. Whenever you move or have a lot of items equipped on you, your stamina bar decreases bit by bit. How do you recover stamina? You eat. And how do you find food? Well, just shoot it. You can eat anything in the game. Rats, tree frogs, crocodiles, and of course, snakes.
Tasty.
You've eaten one, haven't you?
Yeah, it wasn't half bad.
Cannibal.
What was that?
Just don't eat any of the frogs or mushrooms unless you want to get food poisoning. This mechanic is pretty simple, but it definitely adds to the fun of having limited equipment while trying to avoid danger. Speaking of avoiding danger, stealth, the bread and butter of Metal Gear. Between the cutscenes and boss fights, the main gameplay areas can be summed up as Snake, you gotta get from one side of the map to the other. Oh, and by the way, there's some enemies and other shit in your way. Good luck, motherfucker. It's that freedom to get through a level however you want, which is so refreshing. In the previous games, there was only like 1 or 2 specific ways you had to get through a level. Most of the time you have to sneak, and if you get caught, you're basically dead. Might as well just restart from a checkpoint. In Metal Gear Solid 3, it's a lot more flexible whether you want to go sneaky snake or loud. Pure stealth, of course, is the most challenging way to play since enemies can see and hear you pretty accurately, like real life, and you have very little room for error. So, camouflaging yourself, going between grass patches, crawling through vents and tight spaces, or hiding under the cardboard box, the best strategy, they're all really good stealth methods. You can also silently take down peeps one by one, either with a suppressed pistol, or use one of the many CQC techniques. Choke them out, grab them and threaten to stab them while getting info. Beat the shit out of them, or do my favorite move, the slam. Once you're inevitably caught, going loud and guns blazing is still pretty effective. Use any rifles, shotguns, rockets, or grenades you have to mow down soldiers as needed. Maybe explode a barrel here or two. Go to a nearby gun installation and or do what I do and just roll up to every enemy and slam every last one of them. Just boom, 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 fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. By the way, all this footage was taken from one level, and there are a dozen or so levels where you can just full-on experiment. Lure an enemy right next to an explosive, you can... If you're getting bombarded with shots, use the fake death pill. Trick the enemies into thinking you're dead, and then get back up once they leave your body. Wear a disguise to not be seen by people in the lab. I could go on and on, but you get the idea. It's you and your backpack full of equipment, and an open sandbox full of enemies. Have fun. You can be the least stealthy, least soldier-like doofus and still get by perfectly well by messing with the game systems. And you cannot put the controller down, it's so much fun. Best part is, there's no backtracking through levels, so every hour there's always some new scenery, enemy type, or other gimmick that keeps spicing up the game. There are some shootouts while you're riding on a vehicle, there are boss fights with each member of the Cobra unit, and also a boss fight against the Shagohod, and all of them are fun diversions from the main gameplay, but the game isn't perfect, and I have some complaints about the game design. Boss fights are either really easy, or really confusing to find a weak spot. And the codec support sometimes doesn't help. A few times I really had to look at a guide. The camouflage system is also pretty simple. Maybe a little too simple. Just choose what's the highest percentage on the menu based on what your body's up against, and you're good. They could have made it a little more complex. Also, for your equipment and weapons, you only have 8 slots for each of them respectively. That's not enough. I wish I could have all the weapons and items to equip from the main gameplay menu, instead of going back into the backpack to switch out what I need for boss fights and shit. It became frequent enough to be annoying. Also, whenever you take a lot of damage, part of your health bar goes red, and you need to first aid yourself. And that's also an annoying menu. It's just tedious to do this. It's supposed to make it feel more immersive, survival gamey, but it's actually not that immersive to begin with. But then again, these are all pretty minor drawbacks to a game that's mostly polished and brilliantly designed. To end off my critique on a final praise, I like to introduce you to the end. Not the game's ending, but like the end. Huh? Get it? Get it? Once you get to his boss fight, he takes either like 30 minutes to an hour to beat normally because his camouflage is really good. You have to be really stealthy and silent, and if you don't move enough, he will shoot you with a sleep dart, and he will regain health, and you gotta restart the fight all over again. It's slow, but incredibly rewarding to play through. However, there are 2 other ways you can defeat this old man. He appears in an earlier level, and is wide open in his wheelchair to be shot at. If you can snipe him at this point in the game, well, I mean, that's one less boss you need to deal with. The other way is the waiting game. Literally. You save during the middle of the end's boss fight, wait over a week before reloading your save, and once you load back up the save, you find out that the end has died of old age. The game's systems, story, characters, everything is all so cleverly connected. So yeah, as you can tell, I really like this game. This story, atmosphere, gameplay, everything is a joy to experience. It was also a pretty good length, 16 hours to beat, not bad at all. Since it's an origin story to Metal Gear as a whole, it's a great way to start off the series, and with the amount of choice you get when playing, it has amazing replay value. Legit, filming this footage, I had to force myself to stop fucking around with the game so I can get to editing. It's too much fun. So if you haven't yet experienced it, play it. It's like 20 bucks or less if you can get it on sale. And yeah, 9 out of 10 IGN.